Hello, I'm Kirsten.
And I'm Nicholas. Welcome to the Anthropo scene.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, hello, hello.
I was having some technical issues. We're recording on a new platform, but it seems great. Y'all let us know if it sounds better, worse, or the same.
It'll be interesting to see what happens when I start editing it. Hopefully, it gets out of. I know a couple people have talked to me about the recording issues with our previous platform where it kind of cuts out randomly. And the previous platform, this is unnecessary information, but I'm going through it. The previous platform records in a way that it's all one single audio file, but this new one has separate ones, so I should be able to cut out any bits where we talk over each other or if there's any audio issues on one end and not the other.
Yeah, we're stepping up our game for you guys. So
Yeah, new season, new us. And it's not just because we forgot to say goodbye to you last season or tell you that there was a season thing or tell you at all any information about us leaving. We got way busier than we thought we were going to.
we went out for cigarettes and then didn't come back.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway, we're back. Surprise. Anyway, this is Anthropo Snip number 2, season number 2. I guess it'll be like 2.2.5. I don't know if we're going to do that. We'll see. Anyway, today I have a really big topic that I'm going to try to keep super brief. So let's see how that goes.
My guess is poorly.
We're talking about the impacts of, drumroll please, artificial light at night, which is also called ALAN. ALAN. People refer it to.
God damn it, Alan.
Every time I read it, I'm like reading this serious paper, and all I'm getting is like the BBC's talking animals, like Alan, Alan,
Alan,
Alan, oh,
Alan.
No, exactly. But anyway, this is a very serious topic, though. Okay, but it's hilarious because that's all I can think about when I do it. So, artificial light at night is exactly what it sounds like, right? It is the light made by us in the nighttime that shouldn't be there. So originally I had found a cool paper that was about aquatic insects and how they are negatively impacted by light. But then I found this other paper that I'm going to use to talk about the subject because, for one, I thought it was like this neater, broader analysis, and two, this one's open access and the other one wasn't. So you guys can go ahead and read this, but the original paper is also in the show notes, so you can check that out. So this paper was called Pervasiveness of Biological Impacts and Artificial Light at Night. And it's Gaston et al. And it's 2021, so nice and recent. So this paper was really cool because it wasn't necessarily a direct research investigation nor a thorough literature review, but it was a review in the sense that they were trying to look at the neglected aspects of how ALAN is negatively impacting things. So essentially, they're like, we know that ALAN is a problem, and there's a ton of papers that say artificial light at night impacts birds, right? It impacts insects. It does all these things in the city, but they were saying it's actually a lot worse than we think it is, which is like, yay, question mark. But that is the idea of this paper. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that gets overlooked a lot. Is just people don't realize the impacts that just leaving lights on can have, and light pollution is a serious thing.
Exactly. In the intro, they were saying, like, we obviously know climate change is a big problem and plastic pollution is this huge issue, but artificial light at night is so, like, not underappreciated because it's a bad thing. Like
Overlooked.
Like, we're not, yeah, exactly. Overlooked. Thank you. Yeah, so what they did is they came up with 11 key issues to show like how pervasive artificial light at night actually is and things that need to be looked into more. So I thought this was really cool because it was like, hey, here's all the areas we should study more. And they did, if you guys open up the paper and take a look, you know, they did use other papers and statistical data to show that there was a problem there, but then they elaborated on why it's more of an issue than even we know. Artificial light at night is in all habitats, pretty much affects all habitats. It affects all animals, but also microbes, plants, and even fungi are negatively impacted by artificial light at night. Like, did you ever think that a mushroom would be bothered by light at night?
I mean, like, fungi are freaking weird, man. So that doesn't surprise me. What does surprise me is plants, though. I'm interested to hear if there's specific examples of that.
Very briefly, I didn't actually note this one down, but they were saying like trees that are close to a lot of light sources were shedding their leaves and stuff later because they sometimes go off of light cues
Oh,
to start shedding their leaves when it starts to be winter, right? Like deciduous
right.
trees in northern environments. So the ones in a lot of light shed their leaves later, which can actually be really physiologically damaging to the tree if they leave their leaves too long, and then they're kind of get they're just like wasting so much energy that they need to store for winter.
Right, yeah, you
So
do need to get into that dormant state, and yeah, it could definitely be impactful. Because I mean, that's why they lose their leaves in the first place, is to negate the impacts that significantly cold temperatures will have on them.
exactly. So I mean, a bunch of things use seasonal light cues and even just like daily light cues to be able to function. Like think about anybody who lives in the northern hemisphere, or the far southern hemisphere, sorry, where there's a significant change in daylight. Like how much harder is it to wake up in the winter, right? Or go to sleep if there's a ton of light outside your room. So it's that, but for these poor animals that like don't have blackout curtains or wake up lights, right?
Or masks.
So, or masks, exactly. Those things I have never been able to sleep with one, but I it's good to block out the light.
I pretty much take off any clothing on my face when I'm asleep, so like unintentionally. So
Okay. Any clothing on my face while I'm sleeping. Were you like going to bed with like a big scarf on or
well, okay, I was gonna say clothing, but I meant like things on my face, and I didn't want people to think that I was just stripping naked in my sleep and like not invite me over for like a slumber party or something. That doesn't happen. But if you put something on my face, I'll take it off.
we can do an Anthropo slumber party as a fundraiser one day.
Right? Yeah.
Anyway, okay, I feel like we veered way off track, but you guys love it.
No, I'm pretty sure they mentioned this in the paper.
So anyway, essentially this paper was like, okay, we know there's a ton of papers. I did link some in the show notes too, and there's 100,000 more of people starting to try to look at the impacts of artificial light. But most of them as well are kind of on a really individual basis. But one paper in the show notes, for example, they were looking at light on the edge of a lake, and anywhere where there was light, like the presence of predators, here being spiders, was 51% higher where light was versus not. So like there's an impact. Also, I remember I was in the Galapagos, and around the pier there's like all these little sharks and tons of them because everything congregates around the light, right? It's the same thing as the insects being attracted to your porch light and stuff. All right, so I'm just gonna they did this really nice thing in the abstract where they broke down kind of the 11 things. I'm gonna mention those and we'll chat about them, and I have a couple points to bring up as we chat. So first off, the global extent of Allen is underestimated because it's super hard to measure. Like all the satellites that you use to get like the right resolution to see how much light is flooding out from the cities and is in rural environments and that kind of thing is difficult. So it's probably worse than we thought it was just because we can't measure it very well. And then they said like their second and third points were rural light outside of the city is more of an impact than we thought, and moving lights on both cars and boats from people transporting probably has a lot more of an impact than we thought before. So this is interesting, right? Because we think about how cities are so bad, but even the cars going by on the highway at night or on any other road that's like having these flashing lights go through these rural areas is also causing problems.
Right. And I imagine that moving lights are a lot harder to quantify the impacts of just because they're moving.
Yes, harder to quantify. And also, they mentioned that these like flashing lights, because essentially, if you stand like in the dark by a road and the cars go by, it's almost like a strobe light, right? If there's a lot of traffic, it's like like light,
Hmm.
light. So that is like super physiologically damaging to things that live on roadsides.
I'm sure it's especially because it's not necessarily like a predictable thing either. Because
Mm-hmm.
it's not like, like obviously there's going to be some level of repetition to certain lights, which may be more surmountable to certain animals or species. But I can't imagine that the random lighting provided, because there's no consistency to traffic and things like that. So that's got to, have a much larger impact on the animals.
For sure. And they also talked about the stunning, like, the classic deer in the headlights. It's because
Right.
they're so confused, right? Like a deer is walking in the dark and there's this huge bright orb like approaching them out of nowhere. And it actually just like traps them because their brains just can't comprehend what's happening. And that's like what causes a whole bunch of motor vehicle accidents at night with wildlife.
Right. You've also got to take into
Mhm.
account the fact that the animals that are out at night are nocturnal, and therefore the like cones and receptors in their eyes are significantly more sensitive to light. So when a bright light comes out of nowhere and shines them directly in the face, they're probably really confused, but they're also equally just super blind in that situation. They literally can't see. It's like taking a flashlight in the middle of the night, opening your eyes and just shining it directly into it. You're not going anywhere. And if you are, you're not going to be able to see where you're moving.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. So I mean, this one was like super interesting to me as one of the points because it was like something that I hadn't thought of as much before. I've thought a lot about this like urban planning and reducing Allen, but I was like, and cars, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was really cool. And then they also went into the fact that for fourth and fifth, they said marine impacts from artificial light at late night have been extremely understudied. So, and really remote impacts. So, for example, if you have a big logging setup in the middle of the forest, or you have, an oil rig out on the ocean and you have all this light, that is not being monitored very well. And we have no idea what kind of impacts those are having. So, that for sure is worse than we anticipated.
Right. I mean, like you said, brought up this specific example of the sharks and things like that. Like, imagine
Mm-hmm.
if you've got extended feeding times for predators because there's more light availability, and the nocturnal predators or the nocturnal animals that would normally be active during that time frame are like
Mm-hmm.
basically forced to be inactive or come out and be active during high times of predator activity. That could have a direct severe impact on certain populations of animals.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of marine and like freshwater life that has like dial patterns, like vertical patterns in their movement, right? Like they either come up or down. They make these huge migrations in the water column depending on how much light there is.
Hmm.
So, like little buddies stays in the dark during the day and then comes up to feed on like phytoplankton and algae and that kind of stuff at night, but he's coming up there and there's still light so that, as you said, the predators can still hunt them in a time
Hmm.
when they usually wouldn't be able to hunt them. So, and this, in these really remote marine areas, something they brought up that was really interesting is these really remote areas might even have a worse impact because, for example, on the edges of a city or in the city, the animals have and plants and stuff have maybe somewhat adjusted to the
Hmm.
light. But then in these remote areas where you just like stick a big strobe light out or a huge flood lights and stuff, then it really throws off that system because it's just like randomly happened in the middle of their existence. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. So what we need to do is dismantle the Christmas light industry.
Yeah, that's the thing. I see. This is the thing for me. I love Christmas lights, like in my heart, but then I also know that it's just extra electricity and has all these problems. But yeah, I mean, this comes down to making a balance and maybe like shifting some of our cultural things. But we can get to
Right,
that
yeah.
at
I
the
mean,
end,
you
I
could have
think.
Christmas lights inside. I mean, if anything, that they're
Yeah, that's
more
true.
enjoyable that way anyway. Like, oh yeah, no, it's pretty to see lights at night and whatever. Like, oh, also, have you considered who the hell cares? Like, I get it, but like, it's tradition. Well, yeah, things need to change in order to make an impact. So, like, I don't understand the purpose of tradition. And I'm not saying that like I'm attacking you for putting up Christmas lights or whatever, but like because you leaving down Christmas lights if nobody else does anything is not going to make an impact. But also, like, it's just like certain societal changes that need to be like made, and like people need to understand that like change is okay. Like, it's
Hmm.
helpful. People are just so stuck. I don't need to get on a tangent right now, but you know what I
Yeah.
mean.
I mean, the only thing is just to think about it and think
Right.
about maybe some minor changes that you can do in your day-to-day life and that for urban planning as well. This is kind of at the end, but I'm going to bring it up now because it works more with the flow here. They talked a lot about just this whole paper is just showing us that we need to optimize because we need some light at night, because, for example, like human safety and that kind of stuff like comes into effect. But we really need to optimize where do we really need light. For example, on a walkway that's like really well like commonly used at nighttime, yes, but do office buildings need to just leave their lights on 24/7? No,
Right.
right? So that's what it comes down to.
We have so many advances in modern technology too. Like we you can control where light goes nowadays, like with the different types of bulbs we have and like things like that. So instead of having like a giant street light that doesn't just shine the street but also the like 200 yards on the other side of the street, kind of unnecessary.
Exactly. Well, and I've seen some cities that are putting in red streetlights because red we can see and it helps us see, but it doesn't impact a huge amount of organisms.
Right.
So that's really neat. Like, for example, a little side anecdote, when I was doing my undergrad thesis, I had live bees. And if one of them got out, you like turn the light off and turn on a red light because they would just sit still because it was dark. And then I could grab them and be like, please don't sting me in the face, and put them back in their little hive, and everything was fine.
Well, you could prevent that by not grabbing them with your teeth, I guess.
Well, no, I had Bombus impatiens, and
But the bumblebees.
they like to sting the face though. These ones, the impatiens ones, like they go for the head every time.
Is that because they're impatient?
So the sixth, so that was fourth and fifth. The marine and the really remote impacts are more important than we considered before. And then sixth, it doesn't actually have to be really bright light. So we always think of this problem as, the huge headlights coming at the deer or the big city lights, but even just a low light level is enough to throw off a whole bunch of organisms. So that needs to be considered. And then the seventh one, which is probably one that more people have thought about before, is they called it sky glow, but I've always heard it as light pollution, right? Where you have the light from the city and it goes way further out even than the city does. And the cool thing that they brought up here.
I was gonna say sky glow kind of is like a romanticized version, like of light pollution. I guess I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that terminology. I do think it is more accurately describing like that specific type of light pollution. So maybe that's it. But like, I don't like when things get romanticized. You know what I
Oh, you're
mean? Like
totally right.
it's like this, sky glow. It sounds so pretty. It's like, well, no, listen to what I have to say. No, but it's so pretty though. It's like, no, stop.
Yeah, I mean, this paper definitely was not romanticizing anything about Alan. Alan, you suck. I was kidding. If we have any listeners who's named Alan, I'm sorry. I don't know if you should say it Alan or Alan,
No,
but
first off, if your name is Alan, I apologize.
On that note. Okay, so light pollution, something they brought up that I thought was really interesting about it is, think about if you have like a protected area, whether it's marine or terrestrial, and it's not that far from a city. So, you've done everything, like there's no cars, there's no roads in there, humans are kept to the trails and all that kind of stuff. But you have sky glow that is putting artificial light in this protected area, and it's not protected anymore. It's still getting this type of impact from us. You know what I mean? So
Right.
there's all these things that we never even consider. You're like, oh yeah, this is like a pristine. I know that's like a questionable word, but pretty pristine area. But you still have this impact from the light pollution that's causing these problems for organisms. So something else to consider.
Mm-hmm.
Almost there. So the eighth one, this one is really neat for me. So this was actually talking about how landscape. Oh, this was nine actually. Okay, sorry. Eighth is that from a higher elevation, like we're talking about migrating birds and stuff, they can see it from way further away. So it can throw off bird migrations, like a city that's so far away, because they still will get attracted to that light, and sometimes they'll go off course and they'll land. Just think about when you're in a plane, like how far you can see a city lights from because you're up so high. So we have to also consider that.
Yeah, also anecdotally, like for those of
Mm-hmm.
you who are listening and don't know, a lot, if not like I don't know if statistically most, but a lot of bird migrations do take place like overnight. So
Mm-hmm.
imagine the impacts that these randomly well lit areas would have on bird migrations when they're typically be migrating in like really dark conditions.
Right. I know, like, personally, my Twitter and like my Instagram has been really full of the campaign to like turn out your lights over the last little while when some of the main migrations are happening through kind
Hmm.
of the Canada and the United States, for trying to reduce the impact. Because what happens is not only do the birds like go off course and come in, they hit windows because it's these big office buildings and these big houses that have these big bright windows, and they're flying at night, and then they get attracted to the light and they hit the window.
Right.
So it's a huge issue for migrating birds. It's a huge issue for everything, but it's like, I don't have a real number right now, but there's a lot of birds, migrating birds, that die because of window collisions due to the light being on at night. So
Yeah, I think it's second only to cats. I mean, it's cats is obviously like ridiculously higher percentage of overall bird deaths, but I think the second most common reason for deaths in birds is window strikes.
yeah, yeah, it's pretty bad. So ninth, this one is super interesting for me because so this is saying how the overall landscape ecology of things can even be impacted of that. And you'd be like, well, how? And so light can actually cause habitat fragmentation in two different ways. So for one, if there's like this huge big stretch of light and it confuses and repels organisms, then they're not going to go that way. So it's not even just that there's a barrier or a road, right? They're not going to approach the lit area. Or it also serves as a sink for things sometimes, like especially if we're talking about insects where they like all congregate in these lit areas and don't disperse as much as they should. So it has these like large scale impacts on population dynamics, landscape ecology, and dispersal that I never even thought about before I looked at this. So wild.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I mean, we're even getting in the way of love. Like fireflies are not able to be like, hey, look at my sexy glowy butt, because the other fireflies can't see it.
Right.
Just,
Yeah, we're
yeah.
we're we're I don't even know. There's probably a joke there somewhere. We're bug blocking.
Bug blocking. Yeah. Exactly. Bug blocking because of the light. So just like large scale population things that people don't think about. And 10th, everything has interaction effects, which is kind of what we sort of already talked about already. So, these confounding variables. So this thing's dial migration is thrown off. So the predator is out of sync now with the prey, which either means it's eating more of the prey or it's unable to find its prey, or like a whole different array of ideas. But essentially, when we throw off one indicator or one variable about like these organisms' existence, then it has these like cascading effects through everything else. So
Right.
also consider that. And the very, very last one is it's only going to get worse. There's only going to be more development and more light. So we need to tackle this now, not yesterday, like not tomorrow, like yesterday.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, yeah, it's with growing population and things like that, and also there's a massive trend of just buying and establishing new property instead of utilizing old, already existing properties and things like that, which is just reducing habitat and increasing development, which is only going to exponentiate the problems that we're basically just discussing right now.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, the main takeaway from this is just that we really need to research this on a bigger level and find solutions. And like, intelligent urban planning. And I'm not saying like, okay, just like everybody shut every single light off at night, because that's not feasible. But like, how can we do better? And, how can we use different types of LEDs versus red lights or blue lights, and different colored lights can have different impacts on different organisms. So just being more aware of that. And I mean, let's go for red street lights. Like, it's super creepy, but it's good. And I'm down.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like, as long as they're effective at lighting enough stuff and, like, it doesn't increase, negative interactions or dangerous interactions, I think it's definitely beneficial.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, there's a big array of things, but the main thing that, as individuals, I just want people to think about, oh, can I turn out this or this light, earlier, or reduce like the amount of outdoor lighting I have, or, talk to your city council, your urban planners and stuff about just optimizing 100% the lights where we use them. And the thing that really makes me like super peeved is all these office buildings that just like leave their lights on 24/7 for, sometimes they say, quote unquote, security. Like, get a motion sensor. It's not that hard.
An office building that's able to afford lighting itself for that long can afford a security system, which I'm sure they have on top of those lights. So it's like, there's no purpose,
Mm-hmm.
And if you have something stored outside, then yeah, like you said, get a motion detector. It's really laziness and things like that. And also, I think it's probably something related to like status or something.
Right. I do want to say, I feel, I mean, this is anecdotal. This is in no way like actually statistical, but I feel like I have started to see more office lights be off than when I was like, maybe like even 5 years ago. Like, I swear that I do. So I see the change happening, like people get incentives for being more green and having lower energy impacts. And some people also too are just being conscious about their impact, but keep that up. Let's keep, dim the lights down low.
Baby, lock them doors and turn them lights down low.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Amazing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I know that was a lot because they had these 11 key points, but I think it was super neat. The paper's open access in the show notes. I linked all the other papers I found in my very brief search to try to not go down a huge rabbit hole, but you guys can check that out. And let us know if you follow us on Instagram. Go there and comment on this episode what you do to reduce your artificial light at night. I want to hear it.
Absolutely. Or suggestions that you have for reducing light that maybe we didn't talk about.
Yeah, I love it. Anyways, I love you, beautiful nerds, and we will see you around for our next full episode.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Anthropocene.
Be sure to follow us on all social media and feel free to reach out to us with any comments, corrections, or suggestions for future episodes or species you'd like to see us cover.